Right, a video demo on how to apply the Dalapro Roll Nova to a wall. Now I have done several of these videos in the past, but this is going to be a longer video containing more information and useful tips for you to get a good finish easier. Now a lot of people always ask, should you prime a wall before you start? I don't. Take a scraper to it and just remove as much of the loose material as you can. Then start loosening sockets. Now obviously electricity can be dangerous, so make sure you turn the power off at the circuit breaker before you start, and then keep the screws safe so that you don't lose them. Then you need to abrade the surface. You can use any sort of sander. I normally use a dust-free sander, however a sander on a pole is ample. This is to remove any last remaining bits of loose material and just aid adhesion of the Dalapro. The most commonly asked question is, which skimming blade do I use to apply this material? The Prep Alu Flex skimming blade is the one I use. It has rounded edges, it has a very thin blade, and you can actually replace the blade if it gets damaged. Now there are loads of skimming blades on the market, but this is probably the best quality without spending really big money on one of the high-end skimming blades. Then you're ready to apply your material to the wall. Always use a pole. It is hard graft. This stuff is heavy. If you don't use a roller pole, you are going to really struggle to get the material on the wall. Now there are two different methods of applying the material to a wall like this. You can either work in 1 meter squared, apply the material, smooth it out, and then move on to the next meter squared. Or you can do like I do and apply the material to a whole wall at once and then smooth it off at once, sand it at once, and go from there. Either method works fine. I prefer doing it this way because it's a lot quicker. However, if you are going to hesitate, if you're going to take your time doing it, then do it the other way, because otherwise you are going to have issues with drying time and you won't be able to smooth the material out and achieve a nice smooth finish. This is what it's going to look like after you've applied the material. Now it may look all right from this distance, but as you get closer, you will see that the surface is very, very pitted. Don't worry, because you are going to smooth it out as you go. Now before it has a chance to start drying, you're going to need to go around the edge of the wall with a smaller filling blade and just fill in the gaps that you can't get with a bigger Speed Max roller. Then wet the surface. Now a lot of people wet the wall before you apply the Dalapro. I sometimes do, sometimes I just apply the water afterwards. This will slow down the drying time and give you more chance to work the material. When you're smoothing out the material, don't worry if you can't get it perfectly smooth at the first go. Just keep working the wall over and over again until you get it something like. A wall this size is going to take a good 10 or 15 minutes of smoothing. Allow it to dry, which normally takes around 8 hours. It can take slightly longer if you have cold rooms or lack of airflow. Then once it has dried, inspect the wall and just fill any little gaps that aren't completely smooth on your first time round. Now you don't need to do this, but if you don't do this, you will have to sand more of the material off the wall before you can paint it. This is what you're going to be left with, something that's relatively smooth before you start. And as you can see there, it's not powdery at all. Then sander on a pole over the whole lot. If you've applied the material correctly, you shouldn't need to sand too much. A quick 10 minutes, 15 minutes with a sander on a pole on a wall this size and it should be absolutely fine. And also use a fine sandpaper too, otherwise you will put more scratches in it than when you started. You should have a completely flat skinned wall by this point and you're ready to paint. Now a lot of people would just miscoat over this like they would do bare plaster. However, now you've sanded, that surface is actually quite powdery. So I like to play it safe and just stabilise with a coat of Zinsser guards. Now this is a clear material. You need to be very, very careful as you're applying it because it does splash a little bit. So just small strokes up and down, medium pile roller, and just get it something like. You can see the material is almost completely transparent. All it's going to do is bind everything together and give you a really good base on which to work. Then you're ready to paint. This is actually the second coat of paint going on here. And yes, I know my roller pole is a little bit short for anybody who wants to troll me, but I am applying the paint, that's all you need to know. I'm using Dulux Heritage here. I'm using like a creamy grey, but I suppose you can use any colour. This is what you're going to be left with at the end. As you can see, that wall is completely flat. Dalapro Roll Nova is the easy way to skim a wall without having to pay for a plasterer to come in and do it for you. Follow me for more decorating tips.